Imagine a world where the deadliest war of the 20th century erupts, yet Britain never fires a single shot. In this alternate history, we'll unravel how Britain's neutrality could have changed World War I, from Germany's fate on the continent to America's delayed rise, to a century that looks nothing like the one we know. So here's the question. Without Britain's entry, does the war collapse quickly into a continental skirmish? Or does Germany dominate Europe unchecked? Share your take below. I want to see which side you're on. Why did Britain even enter the Great War? The answer lies in a single treaty. When Germany violated Belgium's neutrality in August 1914, Britain declared war, not out of pure morality, but because its entire foreign policy was built on balance of power. If Germany controlled Belgium's ports, it threatened the English Channel, London, and the very heart of British trade. Without Britain stepping in, France would have faced the German juggernaut almost alone, and the world's greatest navy, it would have stayed anchored, leaving Germany free to dominate Europe's coastlines. That's a game changer. Britain's decision turned a continental clash into a truly global war. In our alternate timeline, neutrality keeps its fleet at home, its soldiers in barracks, and its empire untouched. Picture this. German troops storm through Belgium, and no British expeditionary force arrives to resist. France, without its northern shield, suddenly faces invasion from a wider front. Germany gains speed, supplies, and psychological momentum. Without Britain, Belgium doesn't become the heroic, plucky underdog of propaganda. It becomes a crushed corridor for German dominance. Economically, German access to Belgian ports could open direct supply lines and shorten the war. Militarily, it denies France the breathing space it desperately needed in 1914. And politically, the moral outrage of defending Little Belgium never stirs British hearts, meaning no patriotic surge, no rally to war. In our alternate reality, Belgium falls fast, Germany tightens its grip, and the balance of Europe shifts before the world can react. Could France have survived Germany's full fury without Britain? In 1914, France was already reeling under the Schlieffen Plan. The only reason Paris didn't fall in weeks was because Britain's expeditionary force joined the line, slowing the German advance at battles like Mons and the Marne. Remove Britain, and France fights alone, outnumbered, undersupplied, and vulnerable to encirclement. The fall of Paris wouldn't just be a military disaster, it would shatter French morale, government stability, and possibly force an early surrender. Imagine a Europe where Germany dominates from the Channel to the Rhine within months. France's role as a great power collapses before the war even matures. On the Eastern Front, Russia faced disaster even with British gold and supplies backing its war effort. Without Britain, the Tsar's armies enter the conflict underfunded, under-equipped, and overextended. German victories at Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes could snowball unchecked, grinding Russia into collapse even earlier. No British loans mean weaker logistics. No global naval blockade means Germany funnels resources east with fewer obstacles. And politically, a humiliated Russia might implode years before 1917, making revolution a near certainty. What happens when the strongest empire in Europe faces no British blockade? Germany suddenly controls the rhythm of the war. In reality, Britain's navy starved Germany of food, oil, and raw materials, leading to malnutrition and unrest. But in our alternate history, German industry keeps humming. Supplies flow from Scandinavia, South America, even the United States, because the seas remain open. Without Britain's Royal Navy strangling trade, Germany holds the advantage of endurance. And psychologically, its people avoid the crushing hunger that helped break their will in 1918. That single shift could extend Germany's fighting power by years. The world's oceans are history's highways, and Britain was the toll-keeper. In WW1, the Royal Navy didn't just fight. It choked off Germany's lifelines, protecting global trade for allies. Without Britain, the seas look entirely different. Germany's U-boats still prowl, but now they face less opposition. France can't project power overseas. Russia can't rely on imported arms, and global commerce tilts toward neutrality. Meanwhile, Germany enjoys greater access to overseas resources, while colonies in Africa and Asia feel less pressure from Allied attacks. The result? A war less global, more continental, where Europe bleeds, but the rest of the world keeps trading. World War I wasn't just fought in Europe, it stretched across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. But without Britain, those fronts shrink dramatically. In Africa, Germany's colonies might survive much longer. No British campaigns in East Africa, no naval dominance cutting off supplies. France alone would struggle to mount global offensives while defending its homeland. In Asia, Japan still joins the Allies, but it seizes fewer territories without British support, limiting its expansion into the Pacific. The war becomes less global, more regional, with empires conserving strength. The overlooked twist? Germany retains its colonies, boosting prestige and bargaining power after victory. The Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers in late 1914, largely swayed by German promises and British hostility. But if Britain remains neutral, the calculus shifts. Without British threats to its Middle Eastern territories, the Ottomans may hesitate to enter at all. No Gallipoli, no Mesopotamian campaign, no Arab revolt. The Middle East map could look unrecognizable. No Sykes-Picot carving up Ottoman lands. No Balfour Declaration planting seeds in Palestine. Instead, the empire might limp along longer, preserving its crumbling borders. War isn't just blood and trenches. It's also balance sheets. Britain's entry in 1914 instantly shifted the global economy, financing allies, imposing blockades, and disrupting trade routes. Remove Britain, and Europe's economy takes a very different path. Germany keeps trading with the US and South America, avoiding the financial strangulation that crippled it by 1917. Meanwhile, France and Russia, cut off from British credit, struggle to fund long campaigns. The ripple spreads worldwide. Neutral nations profit longer. Markets stay open. And the U.S. doesn't surge into financial dominance as quickly. In reality, America's entry in 1917 turned the tide. But without Britain's involvement, Washington has fewer ties pulling it toward Europe. No Lusitania disaster. No constant British propaganda. No shared blockade strategy. Instead, the U.S. stays neutral far longer, perhaps indefinitely. That delays America's rise as a global superpower, leaving it focused inward. By the 1920s, without war bonds or military buildup, the U.S. might remain a powerful economy, but not yet a world policeman. Without Britain, the Central Powers suddenly hold the upper hand. Germany crushes Belgium, pushes France to the brink, and keeps Russia under relentless pressure. With no naval blockade draining resources, Berlin can fight on its own terms. France might fall by 1915. Russia collapses even earlier. And Germany dictates peace to the continent. The dream of Middle Europa, a German-dominated economic and political bloc, could become reality. This victory wouldn't just redraw maps, it would crown Germany as Europe's master power decades earlier than Hitler ever dreamed. No Britain means no Versailles Conference as we know it. Instead of crushing reparations, we might see a German-led settlement. France loses territory, Russia is humiliated, and smaller nations like Serbia or Belgium face occupation or partition. The punitive chaos that fueled Hitler's rise, it never exists. Instead, German stability shapes Europe, preventing the resentment that spawned fascism. But stability cuts both ways. A triumphant Germany might smother democratic movements across the continent. If you're hooked on this alternate timeline, make sure you hit subscribe. We've got more what-if scenarios that flip history upside down, and you won't want to miss the next one. Britain's empire didn't just provide soldiers. It tied half the globe into the war effort. India, Canada, Australia, South Africa, all bled for London. But if Britain stays neutral, these colonies never mobilize on a massive scale. No Gallipoli tragedy for the Anzacs. No Indian troops storming the Western Front. Without that shared sacrifice, loyalty to the crown weakens. Nationalist movements in India and Ireland gain speed, fueled not by war fatigue, but by Britain's absence on the world stage. Meanwhile, Germany keeps its colonies, projecting power from Africa to the Pacific. World War I was the crucible of modern warfare. Tanks, aircraft, machine guns, poison gas, all accelerated by Britain's entry and industrial push. Without British involvement, innovation slows. France and Germany still experiment, but the scale of resources shrinks. No mass-produced tanks rolling across Europe in 1917. No synchronized convoy systems to fight U-boats. Air warfare develops more cautiously, perhaps delaying its dominance in World War II. On the flip side, Germany's unbroken economy might allow for different advances. Submarine fleets, artillery, or chemical weapons perfected earlier. World War I thrust the United States into global leadership, but only because Britain dragged it in. Without British loans, propaganda, and naval ties, America remains distant. No flood of U.S. soldiers landing in France, no arsenal of democracy trial run before World War II. Instead, America stays focused on internal growth. Railroads, factories, and Wall Street, not trenches. By 1920, the U.S. is still rich, but not yet respected as a world policeman. This delay means the 20th century could stay Eurocentric far longer. Germany, not Washington, sets the pace of diplomacy and trade. The Russian Revolution was fueled by the chaos of war, bread shortages, battlefield defeats, and mass desertions. Without Britain prolonging the fight, Germany might crush Russia faster, forcing an earlier peace. Lenin, waiting in Switzerland, might never get his chance to ride the chaos home. Or, if revolution does erupt, it could unfold differently, smaller, fractured, and less international. No massive Soviet Union rising from the ruins. Imagine a Europe where Germany dominates and Russia fragments, permanently weakened. Borders are written in blood, and without Britain, Germany writes them thicker and faster. A victorious Germany could redraw Europe's map around its own interests. Belgium might be annexed or permanently occupied. France could lose Alsace-Lorraine again, this time for good. Poland may never reemerge, staying under German or Russian shadow. Smaller nations like Serbia or Romania could be carved up into German protectorates. The dream of a united Middle Europa becomes reality, a German-led customs and political union stretching across the continent. The rise of Hitler hinged on two ingredients: Versailles humiliation and economic collapse. Without Britain's entry, neither exists. Germany doesn't suffer crippling reparations. Its people don't starve under blockade, and its empire isn't humiliated before the world. That means no fertile ground for Hitler's rage-filled promises. Fascism, as we know it, might never take root. But here's the paradox. A powerful, victorious Germany might still spark future conflicts, just under different leaders and ideologies. Dual fact punch. No Versailles, no Hitler. The Middle East we know today was largely born from Britain's war choices: Gallipoli, the Arab Revolt, Sykes-Picot, and the Balfour Declaration. But if Britain stays out, none of it happens. The Ottoman Empire, already fragile, might cling together longer, avoiding partition by foreign powers. No artificial borders slicing Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon into Western-made states. No British promises to Arabs or Zionists. Without those conflicting deals, the 20th century Middle East looks dramatically different, perhaps more Ottoman, less fractured. World War I didn't just destroy empires, it destabilized global finance. Britain's war debts shifted economic gravity toward the United States, setting up the 1929 crash and reshaping capitalism. Remove Britain from the war, and that entire chain breaks. The US never becomes the banker of Europe so quickly. Germany doesn't drown in reparations. The Great Depression may arrive later, or with less destructive impact. Global trade might expand instead of collapse, changing the course of the 20th century's economic crises. By sitting out the war, Britain preserves its wealth, manpower, and empire. No Gallipoli, no Somme, no staggering debts to America. At first glance, neutrality leaves Britain stronger, its colonies intact, its industries untouched. But strength can rot in silence. Without the shared sacrifice of WW1, colonial loyalty weakens. Canada, Australia, and India never forge their national identities in blood, and their push for independence accelerates. Meanwhile, a triumphant Germany overshadows Britain diplomatically and economically, turning the empire into a cautious spectator. Now zoom out. No British entry means no lost generation of poets and soldiers, no redrawn maps in Europe or the Middle East, no American superpower status by 1920, and no Hitler rising from defeat. The 20th century shifts completely. A German-led Europe dominates. Russia collapses earlier or fragments. America stays inward, and Britain drifts as a neutral empire on borrowed time. Our world, its wars, its politics, its very borders, would be unrecognizable. Britain's absence in WW1 doesn't just rewrite battles, it rewrites everything. Borders, empires, revolutions, even the superpowers of our own time. But here's the truth. History punishes what-ifs, because every choice left unmade still carries consequences. If you want to see more alternate timelines and forbidden histories, stay tuned. The next one might be even stranger.